Jay Buchanan here from Rival Sons. We've got a new record dropping June 2nd. The title of the album is DARKFIGHTER, and this is going to be a track by track. So with this first track, Mirrors, I think that a key part in my experience in finding yourself is realizing that maybe you were a little bit lost. Realizing that you've gone off course just a little bit. That gives you the opportunity to correct course. This song in particular kicks off the record with realizing you needed that change. There's a lyric in there that I think sums it up. It says, I lost my sight so slowly. I didn't know that I was going blind. And I think that that's indicative of many other things on the record. Kicks things off in a good way, because you can be going about it all wrong and you don't realize it. You zoom out a little bit and you go, oh my God, I've been walking in circles here. Or I thought it was coming across this way, when in reality, it's been coming across that way. Yeah, so that's Mirrors. Years ago, it almost feels like a former life, I had a job burying people. I worked for a funeral home, or actually it was a mortuary. And I had the job of handling the deceased, handling the caskets and driving the hearse around and opening services and attending funerals all day long. People of all ages. And I think that I picked something up there, because it was such a wonderful environment. And I know that sounds crazy, but I was around something very real. And in this life, it's hard to find things that are that blindingly real. Being around that energy, because on some days, the chapel would be overflowing with guests and with family, people, and just brilliant eulogy after eulogy, people talking about this person. At that time, there were a lot of people passing that were from the greatest generation, people that had lived these lives that were heroic. And now here's all of these people that love him so much. It would be a standing room. And other days, it would just be me, a priest, a casket, and a hole in the ground on a hillside. And there wouldn't be anybody there. But looking at this, realizing that we're all headed to that same hole in the ground. And ultimately, I believe you just got to dance your way there, no matter what. But thinking about that great equalizer that we're all well acquainted with. It's been written about plenty of times. This one here, it just came to mind, about how it's inescapable. And doesn't matter how you go about it, it's coming after. The song is really about relishing in the moment. It's very much about relishing in the now. Because I've talked to a lot of older people throughout my life, and the elderly, they would always tell me the same thing. Live it right now, soak it up right now. Do the things that you want to do them right now. And I remember when I was very young, I always thought, oh, that's so cliche, it's so cliche. But the older I got, I realized how true it is to do the things that you're compelled to do, to live your happiness, and live your joy, and to seize the opportunity wherever you can to create your happiness and to savor whatever it is you're living through, whether it's hardship and pain, or whether it's joy. But really savor it until all the flavor's gone, and you're on to the next moment. You're on to the next thing. So that's bird in the hand. Bright light is, in a way, a continuation from the first track, Mirrors. In bright light, you see the redemption coming. You see, whereas in Mirrors it was, oh shit, I've lost my way. Bright light is very much of getting on course and being on course and being rescued. Like, let's get this guy out of here and put him where he needs to be. There's a line in Bright Light. It says, I never noticed I was treating myself so bad, hanging out on the line. I was a victim of a victimless crime. Because you can do these things to yourself, and you don't realize that you're doing them, or whether that thing that you're doing is even inaction. It's putting you further away from that which you desire so much. So Bright Light is very much about seeing that promise and seeing the ship come in and seeing where it is that you need to be. Because once you can get the what, then you can focus on the how, right? And that's Bright Light. Rapture is a special one for me. Rapture is the realization, the reclamation of self in a very special way. I was pretty much raised on Holy Ghost fire. My parents were Pentecostal, so there's a lot of churching going on. One of the really valuable things that I saw there, growing up that way, in a lifestyle of intense prayer, altar calls, very charismatic worship, speaking in tongues, like the whole thing. I think that I had a lot of my own thoughts about what I was seeing and what was going on there, but I think rapture, when people think of that like in the biblical sense, the rapture, it's not what this song is. This song is about giving into this change within yourself, freeing up your hands to reach out to something, perhaps your higher self. This song, Rapture, is really about putting your past behind you and that rebirth actually happening, that rebirth of self unfolding right before you. I love this song. Now this one here, a lot of light and shade. It's a very heavy song, and it's at an interesting part of the album because you've just gone through the rapture and you are on the journey now. This really kicks off the third act, if there is one on this album, because it's a frenzied song. It's very heavy, and it says, am I closer to heaven or closer to hell? The deeper I go, it's harder to tell. Now with this, like if you're at the beach, like in Southern California, where I'm from, the Pacific Ocean, it's pretty violent. Different oceans have different style of waves, and the Pacific Ocean is very vibrant, and you'll get tossed around. You'll get tossed around by these waves, and sometimes you'll get tossed around so much by some of these big waves that when you're underwater, you don't know which way to swim. You don't know which way's up and which way's down, and you'll swim down toward the ocean floor. And so you got to conserve your breath. But that's kind of what this is like, this song right here. When things get really intense and you're just trying to hold on, I think that the lethargy of not being completely sure of your course, I think that's That's part and parcel to like any adventure, any great adventure, or you always hear that self-doubt. You always hear about that peeking its head. And I think that in the trajectory of making this record, DARKFIGHTER, I think that at this point in the process, I really was questioning, is what I'm doing as a writer, is it worth a shit at all? Is there anything, am I doing it right? Or am I just making trash? And I think that it's odd to feel that sort of, what I now see as like healthy artistic insecurity. That was a new thing for me. And just not really being sure. I think that great things happen when you're right on that precipice, right on that cusp of, this may be the best or the worst thing I've ever written, or that the band's ever created. This was a different sonic landscape, and I wasn't entirely sure. And in fact, I wasn't sure for a long time with this song, until we were able to play it live. I was able to realize actually how heavy this song really is, and that it's a great track. But it's like I had to zoom out. I had to zoom out and get far enough away from it to really realize that. And that's really trippy when you get that from your own artistic creation, when it takes on a new life. That's wild. Well, that's guillotine. Now with this track here, you'll notice that there is a long psychedelic intro before the song really kicks in. And then there's a long psychedelic outro at the end of the song. And what this has meant, I wanted to put this in here so that it would be sort of a decompression chamber to pass through, to step into a completely new perspective. And kind of like like a dreamscape, you know, just as you're getting ready to fall asleep when everything gets a little bit fuzzy. But the track itself, it came about very quickly, like a couple of the other tracks on this album. But with this song in particular, I had just moved my family across country. It was during the pandemic. I had he wasn't even 2 months old yet, but a 2-month-old. We were in this house that I had just gotten for my family in Southern California. I was exhausted. I was emotionally exhausted. And the house was cardboard boxes everywhere. I'd gotten everyone down for bed, and it was very quiet in the house. Well, it was raining outside. And I could hear the rain. There was something rhythmic about the way the rain was pouring out of this broken downspout coming off of the roof. I was listening to that, and I grabbed my baritone acoustic guitar, and I just start playing, and I don't want to wake anybody up, so I go into the bathroom downstairs, and I open up these slotted windows, listening to the rain, so I start strumming, and it was right there. I wrote all of the lyrics for the verses, and I wrote the chorus. I think it was a very unique time in my life where I really did feel wrung out. But I also knew that being a father and a husband, and my job in the band, I had to pull myself together and keep my hands on the bridle. That's why it's called Horse's Breath, because the song was very much the cadence. It sounded like someone on horseback, either riding away from something or riding towards something. I love this song. I really do. That's Horse's Breath. This one has a unique story. It's called Dark Side. This is a very personal track. There are more personal tracks on this record, I think, than any album we have recorded yet. This song in particular, like my best friend since I was very, very young, since I was a kid. Very dependable guy, great, great, great person. Well, I found out a few years back that he had been hiding an addiction to painkillers. Everybody knows some painkillers turns into more, and turns into more, turns into more. And the prescription dries up, and then you have an addict, and the addict has to go and get more. So they get it on the black market, on the internet, and they do whatever they have to do. He lost his family. You know, they went on without him and his wife, and he became disenfranchised. Because at that point, anybody who loves an addict knows that the person that you love is no longer at the steering wheel. The addiction is the steering wheel, and the person you love is in the trunk of the car. I think when you love an addict that way and they go down that road, you grieve them. It's a very strange thing. You grieve over the loss, even though they're still alive. And this song right here, I knew that I had to write it because this was at a time when, for the first time in our lives, I was trying to call him and reach out to him and get a hold of him. And for the first time, I was getting no response. And that, you know, it was at such a low point that he didn't feel like talking. And so that's when I wrote this secret terror that an addict has to go through, this very secretive hell. That's where the lyrics in the song says, something's driving you out of your mind, and pretty soon you're gonna get to where you're going. Crazy about this song here is I sent the verse and the chorus and, you know, everything. I sent it over to my partner, Scott. Scott was very well acquainted with this friend of mine, and he says, he totally got it, you know. So Scott goes and he writes the darkest, heaviest riff I've ever heard him write. And essentially, that was the sound of the dark side, you know, that dark side that took my friend from me. And we went into the studio, and this was one of the first songs that we tracked when we began this whole long process of making this record. So we started there, and that was a wild thing because the bar got set. The bar for honesty and for originality got set. It felt like the gauntlet was just thrown down there, and it definitely set the bar pretty high for us. And that concludes the track by track for the DARKFIGHTER record. I'll be talking to you a little bit later in the year, and we'll be going over Lightbringer. See you then.